they moved back in town and they was looking for a place to rent. And he said he ended up staying with a friend of his, which if y'all was been watching my videos, on one video I told you about a guy that was shooting a 2 liter bottle of water, and this is the same guy. And anyways, he was staying with him and his wife, and they had their own room and stuff like that. Well, they would like buy their own food and stuff like that while they were staying there. Well, one time this guy was well intoxicated, and he my kid's grandfather was in the room watching TV, and then his wife was gonna go to the kitchen and cook both of them something to eat. Well, when she went in there and she was cooking and stuff like that, then this guy decides he's gonna go in there, and he's drunk, he's gonna go in there and get mouthy with her for some reason. I don't know, because they invited him to come stay with them, but I think after a period of time they was just having issues. I really don't know why this occurred, but he was getting mouthy with her, and then she was the type of lady, she wasn't gonna take no crap from nobody. So she was going back and forth with him, but her old man couldn't hear it because he's in the bedroom watching TV. And then the guy hauls off and slaps her. So when he slaps her, she goes into the bedroom and tells her old man. And I've known this guy ever since I was a kid, and he always kept a steel bar in his pocket where he'd put it in his fist if he got into an altercation or whatever. And so he's the one telling me this whole story anyways. But he puts the bar in his hand, he goes in there after his old lady says that the guy slapped her. He goes in there and just wells him right in the eye and knocks him out into the kitchen floor. And then he's got this big black eye, And they ended up moving out after that. They actually ended up coming to stay with us. And then they ended up finding a place to live later on. But I don't know what got into that guy for that guy to end up slapping the lady, because they all knew each other and they was all friends, and I don't know what his problem was, but that wasn't gonna fly. And he knew her old man and how he was, and he knew that there was gonna be consequences to pay, by doing that. And I'm sure it didn't take no less than 5 minutes for her to walk in there and tell him, and then him come in there and just knock him out, But they ended up moving out, coming staying with us for a while until they found a place. But I think some people just don't think about the consequences when they do something. Whether you're intoxicated or not, you need to realize that you can't put your hands on people, because there's consequences to pay if you put your hands on people. I mean, you just really got to treat people how you want to be treated, So just expect, if you put your hands on somebody, they're probably going to put their hands on you. Or if not, they know somebody that will put their hands on you. So, keep that in mind. And try to treat people like you want to be treated, That's the main goal. And everybody can get along, I remember this one time I had this car, and I was going to work on 10 Mile, and I was going down the freeway, and all of a sudden my front seal of my transmission went out. So when that happens, all your transmission fluid runs out onto the ground, and then your car quits pulling. So I had to pull on the side of pull on the side of the freeway. So now I'm stranded, and I'm like maybe a quarter of the ways from my house. And so the only thing I know to do is just lock the car up, walk up the exit, go across the freeway, walk back down the exit, and walk down the freeway to my exit. But as I'm walking down the freeway, a state trooper gets behind me, and then he like turns on this loudspeaker and stuff, and then I go to the passenger window, and then he tells me, he says, "You know you ain't supposed to be walking on the freeway." And I told him, I said, "Well, my car broke down, so I was just trying to walk to my exit." And he said, "Well, where's your exit at?" And I said, "Springwells." And he said, "Hop in the car, I'll give you a ride," because he says it's too dangerous for people to walk on the freeway, because if there happens to be an accident or something, you could possibly get killed, you know. So when I got in the car, he called the dispatch and, you know, told them that he was taking me to the exit. So he takes me to Springwell's exit. I get out, which I appreciated that, because that would have been a pretty good walk, you know. And then I get out, and later on I get my friends and we go tow the car back to my house. And then at that time, my old lady, she was like, "Why don't you just sell the car, you know, because it needed a seal in it." And at that time, I didn't know how to put the seal in it. I do now, but I didn't at that time. And plus, I didn't have the right tools to actually pull a transmission and all that. So it would have been, you know, almost impossible to do it, because I wasn't prepared to do it, didn't know how to do it. So she was telling me to sell the car. And I actually got the car for very cheap. I think I paid $75 for it. And it wasn't running when I bought it, but I had got it running. And so, you know, I didn't have much in the car. And I was like, this guy that I know that runs a junkyard in Detroit, his name's Gary. I said, "Gary, if I get this car over there, Gary will probably buy it from me, you know." So what I didn't know, that the person I bought it from him by somebody standing good for that person. But he went ahead and gave her the title, and she was buying it on payments, but she didn't finish paying for the car. So we get this car over there to the junkyard, and he's asked me, you know, he's looking at it, he's smiling and stuff like that, and I know him, you know. So he's like, "What's wrong with it?" And I said, "The front seal went out on it, and all the transmission fluid, you know, went to the ground, so it's not pulling." And he's like, "How much you want for it?" And I said, "I'll take $200 for it." He said, "You know this used to be my car?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Yeah, I sold it to a lady, and a guy stood good for it. And so I went ahead and gave her the title, and she was paying payments, but she didn't finish paying for it." So at this time, I'm thinking he ain't wanting to give me anything for the car, because the lady never paid for it, but I had the title. And he said, "Seeing she owes me money, the most I can give you for it is $85. So I ended up selling that car for $85. Because I could feel what he was saying, you know, if the lady didn't finish paying him, he actually took a loss, you know. And then I wasn't about to tow the car back to my house, so I was like, "Yeah, we could do that, you know." And I went ahead and did it, you know. But I thought that was crazy, because, you know, he probably would have gave me 200 if that lady would have ended up finish paying for the car, you know. But anyways, I had did that. Then I ended up buying this 4-door blue Diplomat. And I want to say this baby was, I want to say it was a 1975. It's like an old police car, like. But one thing about it was the back window was out of it. So I had bought this for $50. I bought this car for $50, and then I just put plastic around the back windshield, and then I had duct tape, you know, all around it to hold it. And I'm a young man at this time, you know, so I'm doing whatever it takes to have transportation. And anyways, this car was, it would run, but every time you would turn a corner, it would stall out. And I kept trying to figure out what was wrong with this car. Then later I found out that the choke on the carburetor would close, you know. So I ended up getting a stick and putting a stick in there where it wouldn't close. So then when you turn the corner, it would stay running. And I just said, you know, guessed at it and figured it out, you know, but I just couldn't believe it that, you know, because every time you turn the corner, it stalled and you started back up, it would run again, you know. So it was just wicked, but that car lasted a little while before it broke down, but it was only like a $50 car, so it wasn't that big of a deal, you know. But back in them days, I remember one time my brother bought this car for $75. It was a Nova, and it had the gas tank in the trunk. There's a lot of ghetto rides in Detroit back in the day. You know, people would, you know, if it was drivable and get you to A to B, people, you know, didn't care back when everybody was just starting out, you know. But anyways, he had bought this car and the gas tank was in the trunk. And he had actually, you know, I guess somebody had took the gas tank off maybe to put a fuel pump in it maybe. I'm not for sure why the gas tank was in the trunk or even if the fuel pump was in the gas tank on that particular car, you know. But anyways, it was in the trunk and they had the trunk, you know, with bands holding it down. And he brought it to the neighborhood and was showing us the car. And I was laughing my ass off because I thought it was funny that he bought a car and then the gas tank was sticking out of the trunk. And he just gave a little bit for that car also, so, you know. But back in them days, you can buy a car for a little bit of nothing. It wouldn't look like much, but most of them would run, but they would look real rough, you know what I mean? Or a window out of it or something, you know. I remember one time traded a motorcycle for a 68 Impala 4-door. And this car had a light switch. It wasn't a stolen car, but it had a light switch because I think somebody had stole it at one time and they tore the ignition out of it. So when the people got it back, they just rigged up a light switch like that's in your house and they screwed it to the dashboard and then they just ran the wire to the switch, and then you had one wire that was just hanging down. And the way you would start this car is you'd flick the light switch on, and then that loose wire that was hanging down, you just touch the side of the light switch with where the screw is, and it would crank the car. And that was a ghetto car too, but it had like a 396 engine in it. And we ended up taking this Impala from Detroit to Tennessee. And we was actually moving from Detroit to Tennessee. And it was like me, my brother, and my uncle. And as we're going in Ohio, we fill up with gas. And then we're driving down the freeway. Then we start smelling gas real strong. So then we pull over at a gas station. And then what had happened is one of the gas lines started leaking. So we had to get a rubber hose and some clamps and put that on and fix it and continue on. And what was another weird thing about this Impala, it had 2 bad shocks and it had 2, okay shocks. So when this big, and this is an older model Impala with a 396 engine in it. And it's like a tank really, because it's the ones that weigh a lot. And anyways, it had the 2 shocks bad, 2 shocks good, and they were on they had like the driver's side shock was good, and then the passenger rear was good, and then the passenger front was bad, and then the driver rear was bad. So as we go down a freeway, this thing would rock, kind of like a rocking chair. And everybody that was riding past us would just be looking at us crazy. And this thing would just rock like a boat going down the freeway. But this car actually made it all the way to Tennessee, And then when we got to Tennessee, there was this dude that was wanting the motor out of it. And so he ended up talking my brother into selling him the car so he can get the motor out of it. But that car was something else, man. That was the first time I seen a car that started with a light switch. And then the way it would rock going down the highway because the shocks. It just made me laugh like hell. And then especially when people would ride by and they would literally just turn their head and look at the car and just be laughing, because this thing just rocked like I'm talking about. It was crazy. One time we bought a car. It was a red 2-door. I want to say it was a Chrysler. And it had, the rear end had, people as familiar with cars and underneath cars, they'll know what I'm talking about. But anyways, the rear end had the rear end hooked to it. And then it had like a beam, kind of like a beam hooked to the rear end, kind of like. And then it ran up like the middle of the car, And then this thing was broke loose, so it was hanging down. And we had bought it from a girl over on Trumbull Avenue, off of Trumbull Avenue. And she actually sold this car for like $80. And because the part of that frame was hanging down. So we ended up getting it. We drilled 2 holes in the middle of where the stick shift was, right behind the stick shift. We drilled 2 holes there, and then 2 holes in that beam. I don't know what that was really, but it looked like it was connected to the rear end. But then we drilled 2 holes in there, and then you put 2 bolts and washers and screws, so it would be held up at least where it was supposed to be, But it would still move, when you drive it and ride it. And it was probably real dangerous to do that. But we, run around in that car for a long time. and that was an $80 car. It was a small, like I believe it was a Chrysler. But yeah, it was a trip. There was just a lot of times you could get cars real cheap back in them days. You know, you just be surprised how much somebody would ask for a car. And these days you can't find a car like that. I have found some uh, cars for. I think the cheapest I found these days was about 1,500. You know, but it's just hard to find a cheap car in today's time. You know, but we've had a lot of them. A lot of them cars that was like rigged up. And I remember having a car one time. The windshield wiper motor quit working, so we ended up tying something to the driver's side windshield wiper, and then something to the passenger windshield wiper. And you'd have to have two people to actually ride to actually, if it was raining and you was trying to go somewhere, y'all would have to work the windshield wipers from inside the car. you know. So, it's just crazy stuff like that people used to do just to get from, point A to point B. It was just weird, you know. But I remember my first car I ended up getting was a Duster. And this Duster was a white Duster, had rust around the wheel wells and, around the bottom parts of it. But it was free. And actually, my brother-in-law had gave it to me. And then I walked around to the store, a beer and wine store, and I was talking to the dude, and he had a Lincoln Continental that had the electric headlights. I think it was like a 70, probably 70 something model. And I liked it that. And and he had a for sale sign on it, is what it was. And I was like, how much you want for this car? And he was like, well, I'm trying to find something that's cheaper on gas. And then I knew that I could probably offer him this Duster, which is a good deal for him and kind of a good deal for me because I wanted that Lincoln. So actually, I told him I got a Duster, and he was like, well, can you bring it around here? Let me check it out. And at that time, it had a flat tire, so I had to plug the tire with some glue. I had the plugger, but I didn't have no plugs. So we used a sheet and actually plugged the tire with a sheet, and the plugger and the glue, and it actually held it. And then aired up the tire. Then I drove it around there. And then he was like, yeah, I'll trade you. He said, because I live way out on 10 Mile. And he said, it's going to take a lot of gas. It takes me a lot of gas to come back and forth to Detroit. And I was like, all right. So I got that. And it was fairly decent. Had a little rust around the wheel wells, but not that bad. And it was like blue. And then it was a dark blue, and it had dark blue interior. But it was a Lincoln Continental, So, and the problem with that is it was a good car and stuff, but that thing really did take a lot of gas. Because when me and my friends would try to go hang out, we'd put gas in it, but then we couldn't hang out long because this thing would like drink the gas. But it was an interesting ride, because it was. My girlfriend liked it. I liked it. It was a good car. It's just back in them days, you could, and I did get that one Duster for free, and that was like the second that was the second car I got for free. Well, actually, the first car I got for free, then the other car I got for free was a Mustang, a light blue Mustang. It was a two-door, and I forget what year this Mustang was. I want to say an 80-something model Mustang. And it was free, and it was nice because it was from the South. So it was nice, and I had that for a long time. Then I ended up trading it for a Chevette, which was a bad trade, but the Chevette looked brand new. And I had did that, but the Chevette didn't have no power. Anybody that knows about Chevettes, they'll get power as you're going, but as far as like takeoff or anything like that, them things, it's like driving a go-kart in a way. But I've had many cars, in my time, and as I got older, I always liked Cadillacs and Lincolns and stuff like that. So, and Jaguars and stuff like that. So, as I got older, these are cars I would get a lot of Lincolns, a lot of Cadillacs. I've only had one Jaguar, but these are nice rides. I just like the way they drive, the way they ride, and just the luxury of it is what I like. And a lot of people don't care for them, but them are some rides I like. Mainly is the Cadillac, the Jaguar, the Lincoln. I like Mercedes too, but I never owned a Mercedes. But I've thought about buying one. Who knows? I just don't like them little cars, like the real little Mercedes and all that. I really think people get cheated when they buy them. Small Mercedes, or today I seen a Land Rover that was a Land Rover Sport. I mean, this car is real small, but maybe the people need to start somewhere, and they couldn't afford a full size Land Rover, so they got the Land Rover Sport. But when I was riding behind this vehicle, I was like, oh man, I feel like you got robbed, and I don't know how much they paid for it. I've been meaning to look it up. I think I will look it up. But because I know them Land Rovers are high anyways, but if you got a Land Rover Sport, it's just real small. And I never been into them Land Rovers. I mean, I'd have a Jaguar over one of them any day. And I just think they're overpriced and things like that. And they don't look like much to me. Now, I do like the Jeep wagon Mercedes. And I do like them. Them are kind of sharp, But so, But anyways, I'm gonna get off here and be looking for the next video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, the notification bell, and share. And I'll be back on here another time for another section of my life. So, that being said, we're signing out.